Welcome to Podcast 175. Are you speaking up when there's a breakdown in the process? Stay with us.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Today, we're going to talk about declaring breakdowns, which is actually a lean and an integrated project delivery concept, an IPD concept. And it's really important because it's key to building great teams as a start, and then also it's key to producing a good product. And this is just a little bit different than the podcast where I talked about problems not being a problem, because I'm going to talk about how it is integrated in an actual team, in a process, in a way of thinking, so that you can kind of brand it and bring it into your organization. And so we're going to talk about declaring breakdowns. So what am I excited about? Let me talk about that first. Last night, we uploaded the remaining files, the corrections for the audio mastering for Elevating Construction Superintendents. I hope it doesn't take that long for it to get up on the market. We went through that thing and made it perfect and beautiful, the intro and the outro and everything, and for each of the audio files. So I don't think there's going to be any problems that they want to change from an audio mastering standpoint. So let's hope and pray that that gets out. So I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about that being done. Learned so many different things on how to do the audio mastering properly there. And I want to thank our producer, Reno, for doing that. Absolutely did a fantastic job. Also, talk about some feedback from our fans, from our listeners. This person said, it's great to connect with you. After looking at your profile, I decided to give your Elevate Construction podcast a listen. I'm definitely going to keep tuning in, as the first few episodes were very helpful, especially with where I'm at in my career right now. Thanks for reaching out both here on LinkedIn and via your podcast. As someone who is still navigating the beginning stages of a construction career, I'm always looking for advice, mentoring, training, etc. It's very refreshing to find some genuinely helpful content out there. Thanks again for what you're doing. So, really appreciate the feedback there. Again, these are paydays. We really want to make sure that we're helping people with everything that we're doing. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Here's some conflict. You are not declaring breakdowns. You are not telling the hard truth. So let me tell you a little story. I believe that this came from the book, The Culture Code. I'd have to go back and look at it, but there's very much a story that I love to repeat where Disney was producing some really garbage movies. Again, I hope I don't get in trouble for that by saying that on this podcast, but if you've ever heard the movie or seen the movie Home on the Range, it's funny because my kids actually like that, but the animation is garbage. The story's kind of garbage. The humor isn't, great quality, and it's just kind of a B movie. If you check it out if you want to, maybe even Google it. But Home on the Range, it was a Disney cartoon movie. It's a full-length movie, but it really wasn't that good. And you have some pretty high-profile people in there doing some goofy, silly B movie kind of things. And it didn't do well at the box office. It didn't do well for income. I think they even lost money. And Disney has had some flops in and around that time. The movies just weren't that good, and so they brought in Pixar to help and to see if they could get their movies, their kids movies, their full length movies, their cartoons back on track. And the process that Pixar had was pretty interesting. When the artists and the cartoonists and the script writers and basically the teams that started these movies out would come in, the first sessions were brutal. I mean, they would pick apart the characters and the plot and the way they were going to deploy the message and the animation and everything. And these artists, these story writers, the teams that were putting these together would leave so dejected. And what they said at Pixar is that the first time that they go in to review a movie at Pixar, everyone's going to leave knowing that it's all pretty much going to change. They're going to tear apart the entire thing, and they're going to have to go back to the drawing board, because that first critical review is key to getting it right. And even though it's hard, it's better for the end product. And if you know anything about Pixar, their movies are fantastic. And those movies are visually stimulating. They have a great plot twist. They bring conflict. They're just really good. They're emotionally stimulating, meaning they draw you in and you leave like you feel moved. The movies are absolutely over the top fantastic, but it takes a lot to get there. It's a harder process because they declare breakdowns as they go. And what was happening at Disney is the script writers and the artists and all of the people that were part of these teams, they would fall in love with their characters. They would come up with characters. They would brainstorm them internally. They would be heading down a direction. And if somebody made a comment, they would either be too in love to change it, or somebody wouldn't speak up at all. And so when Pixar came in and helped Disney figure this problem out, it was really about declaring and fixing breakdowns. And so I've loved that story, especially because you're able to tie it to that movie Home on the Range, which is really kind of a B or C movie. And so that's what I want to open up with. And so the principle is, in everything that we're doing, especially when we have a good team, and especially when we have a good leadership team, or a project, or a lean project, or an IPD project, we have to be looking for value. And when we see and experience waste or a lack of quality, we must say something about it and declare it. And so there's a couple of things, and I was talking about this on the Geoholics podcast the other day, but I'll mention a couple of them here. In order to do that, first, we need a cultural shift. In school and in life, we're taught to shut up. We have to get that past that programming. If you remember in class, you had to raise your hand. You had to be quiet. If you disagreed with a teacher, they would just, gripe back at you. So do some college professors, right? And then in life, in some of the jobs that we've had, and we know these horrible organizations and bosses where you say something and they ignore you and they don't pay attention and they don't fix the problem, right? And so we have been culturally conditioned to just shut up and put up and just to, really not say anything. And so to deprogram that, we have to either intentionally practice, be absorbed into a good culture, or go to something like a boot camp or like a training that Rapport Leadership International does to get us to where we'll actually step out, speak up, and get past our blocks to leadership. Or we can do coaching, right? So if we get past that, secondly, we need to have eyes to see. So many of us, and I'm going to put myself in that boat, whether it was a long time ago or recently or now, have had eyes that don't see the problems. We're conditioned to be mediocre, and we just don't see breakdowns, right? We think it's fine. We're like, yeah, that checks the box. But we have to be striving for perfection. So having a higher mental set point is the key to that one. Third, we need to be more accountable. And I think that any of you that are overseas should appreciate my little comment here, because I mean it lovingly and with criticism. Americans just aren't a very accountable people. Like when we're out talking to our neighbors and our dog crapped on the other person's lawn, we're like, that's not my problem. I'm not accountable. When we're out on the sidewalks and we throw trash down and somebody says something, we're not accountable. We're not accountable for public decency. In the workplace, people don't like to be held accountable. We're just not an accountable people. And if you're mad at me for saying that, that's fine. But you got to look, if you go to Japan, people in Japan that will put their credit card on a little tray and hand it to you and really focus on customer service and fix the things that they're doing wrong immediately because they have a duty. They feel a duty to do that. Compare that to the United States and to we Americans, we're just not that accountable. And so we need to change that culture by encouraging more accountability, and as leaders being more vulnerable and accountable in the first place. And then fourth, we need to understand that problems are not a problem. And this is different from the previous podcast that I did, because we need to institutionalize this within a team. And I'm going to talk about that right now. And one thing I didn't mention before, but I did in Disconnected podcast, is that problems belong to the group. So I have said that before, but when I say, we need to understand that problems are not a problem, nobody's going to buy into that if they feel like the problem is still their individual fault, and then we're just like, oh, it's not a problem, speak up. No, problems are not a problem on a team. Ignoring problems on a team is a problem, and we have to realize that the problems or opportunities belong to the group. I remember one superintendent one time that I worked with, he changed the name from problems to opportunities, and I started to really follow suit on that and say, hey, we have an opportunity, and it got people's minds in a direction of, we're not going to be punished or de-incentivized for this. This is an opportunity for this team to lean in and really go do some great things. And so maybe one, consider calling problems opportunities, but the other thing is realize that problems belong to the group, not the person. In fact, there was an organization the other day where I was consulting with them. They're a fantastic group, and they always do 4 or 5 times what I even suggested in the first place. I've never seen people like this. They're over the top. And I said, hey, if you're conditioning newer people to bring up problems, how about have a little problem bowl in the middle of the room, and at a part of the agenda say, hey, everyone take a little sticky, write down a breakdown or something and throw it in the bowl, and we'll go through them. We'll have somebody go through and bring them up, and then we'll all commit to speaking up about them. And then the first week, not much really happened. The person that put in the problem maybe spoke up. And then the second week, some of the people that put in the problems put in more pertinent or impactful problems or breakdowns that they saw, and actually waited for other people to speak up. And then conversations started to get going, and they were actually, going through some of these and culturally conditioning everybody to doing it. The other thing, the reason I like the bowl, and I learned this from a trusted mentor. He said, if you and the person you're talking with can imagine that the problem is on a bowl on the desk, and I've told you about this before, instead of that you're talking at each other and that the problem is attached or associated to the other person, then you can detach emotion, and then you can get through the conversation. And so sometimes with somebody, when I know that it's going to be an emotional discussion, I've literally said, hey, let's imagine right here in my left hand, there's a bowl, and the problem is in here. We're talking at the problem together. We're not talking at each other, and emotionally connecting these things to each other. And actually, it's worked. We were able to get through it without emotions, without getting angry. So not only like writing down and putting problems in a bowl, but imagining that when you're having conversations sometimes is pretty helpful. Or if you're an emotional person that gets emotional, maybe you imagine that the problem is in the bowl. But basically, we have to understand that the problem is not the person. The problem is a separate thing, and it belongs to the team. Wow, I really picked that up and rounded that out. That turned out well. Thank you. Okay, so let's keep going. The teams that fix problems faster win. And so you're not going to fix problems unless you can see them. And you're not going to fix them faster unless you start fixing them and incentivizing everybody to fix them. So problems are not a problem. Not recognizing that we have problems is a problem. So we have to remember that. And just so you know, using this declaring a breakdown branding or titling, this is very much in line with the lean community, very much in line with IPD. If you use this, people I think are going to generally understand what you're talking about. But if you bring this branding saying, hey, I'm going to declare a breakdown into your culture, your organization, your terminology, here's how you can do it. You can declare a breakdown when you see a disconnect with the team, a violation of the culture or core values, something that is waste that needs to be fixed, something that passes a defect along to the customer, something that disrespects people, something that creates unhealthy variation, an individual or the team is confused. If somebody's confused, just be like, hey, time out. There's a breakdown here, at least in my mind. The results are not what you want them to be for the project. And you can declare a breakdown whether it's big or small. Let's not get into the habit of thinking that they have to be grandiose. I mean, if it's a small thing, we can declare it. And if somebody declares a breakdown, we stop and pay attention. And this goes back to the unaccountable culture here. How many times in our culture does somebody say something's wrong and we just blow right past it? And we just can't do that anymore. So if somebody declares a breakdown, we stop and pay attention. A saying that we have in my family and in any of my circles is, when it comes to safety or respecting people, like we just stop. It doesn't even matter if we agree. It's just like, and let me say this. The other day, we were at an organization where, when people were presenting, we were asking them to wear masks, and some people were like, well, okay, I can kind of see that, or yeah, I love that. That makes me feel safer. Or some people were arguing, well, what if this and that, and the spores do this, and arguing about it. And I was like, hey, guys, this doesn't come down to whether or not we're going to argue logic on the safety thing. If somebody doesn't feel safe, we're going to be considerate enough to stop and listen and pay attention. So if at this organization, we're all speaking and somebody asks me to wear my mask while I'm doing it, and you can actually hear quite well through a medical mask, why wouldn't I be considerate of somebody who feels unsafe if I didn't do that? It's not about logic. It's about, do I care about somebody enough to respect this? And the answer is yes. And then sometimes logic comes into play. But if somebody says, hey, there's a safety problem or a respect problem, like, we pay attention. That's it. Our culture is we stop, we pay attention, we take care of it. And so the way you can create that culture is by praising people when they bring things up. Give everyone authority to stand up and speak up and say something. De-incentivize hiding problems. If you know that somebody did that, then there's got to be consequences for that. And always attempt to shorten the timing between when you notice a breakdown or the team notices a breakdown and when it's declared. Because the current condition is we don't speak up. We make crap work sometimes. We push it onto the customer. People don't feel authorized to speak up, and we reinforce a disconnected culture. And so my challenge would be, make it a cultural norm to speak up. Make lean improvements continuously and become a problem-solving or an opportunity-obtaining or, a lean improvement cultural team, cultural organization. And if you have enough of these, you might even need to scrum the improvements, meaning if you're like, hey, I don't need to notice problems every day. I know that I've got 50 of them. Why not put that on a scrum board as a product owner and let the team autonomously go through and fix those opportunities, as long as they're not a part of the line and immediately needing to be fixed. So we really have to have eyes to see here. We need to make sure that we all have license to speak up, and we need to culturally reinforce fixing problems and really get that shift and start doing this. And I'm going to brand it for you. We have to start declaring breakdowns. On we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.